Alchemy Lab. This is Startup Meetup. And we have some seats up front, or any of those soft chairs you can commandeer, guys. Couch space up here next to Henry. What's your last name? Blue and Win. Where's Win? What's your last name? Smith. These guys are from Alchemy Learning, and they came all the way from Baltimore to share their story about Alchemy Learning. Let's give them a round of applause. And a couple of news items, and then we'll get right into their story and Q&A. Last week, Walnut Street Labs was awarded Partner of the Year from SCORE, and does everyone know what SCORE is? I think it was Service Corps for China Executive. Bob Fedor, my neighbor, kind of started it all off in the backyard, chatting me up about what I should do with LLCs and startups, and that was 5 years ago. And we didn't expect it, but we had a great experience accepting the award with 4 other companies, 3 others, last week in front of like 200 people. But Wafatopia, a food startup out of Artisans Exchange. And Ben, you got back up on, what were the other companies?
Wafatopia, Artisans Exchange. There was a lady who I believe was a realtor of some kind.
Yeah, we'll get their names, so we'll give them some legitimate street cred or PR. But we got all these awesome awards or thank you letters from Brian Costello. Let's see.
County Commissioner.
Dan Truitt's office.
Yes, or actually I can do that.
Andrew Dinneman's office. Ronald Casey's office. SCORE office. And the commissioners. No Obama, but whatever. So, SCORE, if you're starting a business or even if you're running a business, SCORE has people that can help you in your niche and with your specific problem. So definitely reach out to them.
Free. Unlimited.
So when we started Startup Meetup in January 2014, we had an attorney do the first one. And then Bob and David Hausman, who was the former CEO of Unisys, did the second one. There was like 10 people, it was freezing, but you guys came out and that helped kind of create the momentum. And David Hausman gave us the lead to the chief engineer at Unisys. And just about a year later, we did that big event with Unisys. All starts with your neighbor. So last week's Startup Meetup was Will Reynolds from Sear Interactive, which was awesome. He had a lot of really intelligent things to say. I wish I had him the third speaker last year, but you take wisdom when you can get it. And next week?
Next week is Wheelhouse Analytics, Frank Coates. They're an analytics company that provides data solutions for investment management industry. They're local.
Yeah, they're a block. They're 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
And they're about a team of 15. They're doing some interactive, not interactive, interesting iPad apps for sales calls. It's kind of like SetV. You should invite those guys. It's
I will.
Do we have something night else?
We have, yes, we do. There was a little bit of miscommunication. We have the founder of MyZip here. Do you want to talk about your launch and all that stuff, Reach?
Want to give a sense about it because it's happening next Tuesday.
Tomorrow. Wednesday. Hi, I'm Rich Saman, founder of MyZip. MyZip is we just launched last weekend, I should say, and we basically enable the creation of location-based tags and sharing of location tags more easily than other geotagging services. So I'll be talking more about it tomorrow and doing a demo. So look forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks.
Cool. So Night Owls is every week too. We've got some seats up here. Anybody? So night owls every week. We've done about 70 of them. We've done about 70 keys. And come, experiment, experiences. Jesse, anything from your camp?
We have, this Saturday from 12 to 10 is the Wanderlust Film Festival, being hosted by Wall Street Labs. Come on out. Tickets are only $10 for all day, but it's all travel and adventure themed films. There's short ones, there's a couple of full-length ones as well, but there's one about two young girls who traveled Lake Michigan in a dugout canoe. That's kind of cool. There's one, all sorts of, quirky kind of adventure films. So that's on the website too. If you're interested in that, come out all day. If you need a break, plenty of restaurants and shopping around. You can do that during the day. Starts at 12.
Okay, cool. And we are looking for a sponsor for Indie Film Night. This is not Indie Film Night, but it's part of that series.
We would like that and a film camp too, as well.
Film camp.
For
Cool.
kids.
Do I have anything else to say?
Let's just introduce Henry.
Okay, cool. So Henry and Wynn are going to share the story about Alchemy Learning, and then we'll dive into Q&A. So let's give them another round of applause for coming all the way from Baltimore. Over to you.
Thank you. And thanks for coming out to hear our story. I don't know if I'll have as many intelligent things to say, but hopefully what I'll say will be, we're looking forward to kind of just getting an opportunity to tell our story, and it's something we found, we don't get to really do enough. And one of the appeals of coming, to a different area, a different startup community is you can kind of get away from a little bit of the, I call it maybe sibling rivalries that you might have within your own community, and really tell it, really tell the story of a startup, which is, not always the, it's a longer, harder road than everybody thinks it is. And sometimes when we're down in Baltimore in events, we're always, you feel like you're kind of jockeying in order to, maybe court the same investors or just, be the next hot, trending startup. And, while I feel like there's a lot that, we can be proud of, there's also, a story to tell. It wasn't as planned, I guess you could say. There's a lot of variables. And, in thinking through kind of how to structure this talk, I was trying to figure out, well, what is a way? Is it, talk about some lessons or axioms or something else that might apply to other people, and kind of realize, that's really not the case. We had plenty of advice along the way, plenty of saying, people, their sayings, their wisdoms, but, really, it doesn't necessarily apply to, you and your individual journey. So, almost, more thought about, it's almost an interesting way to tell it would be to chat about kind of those axioms as they didn't apply to us. And the first one, just to chat a little bit about my background. And, this, if I were to title this kind of my background, the axiom that doesn't necessarily apply, but maybe it's starting to. It's a saying called "small ball counts." And small ball counts. It's kind of a baseball term, playing advancing runners, etc., versus hitting the home runs. So my background is in teaching and education after college, and Wynn and I went to college together down at Davidson in North Carolina. I went abroad, taught in China, ESL, at a rural area. I came back to some graduate school and ended up teaching in Baltimore at my alma mater. And it was a really great experience. I was teaching middle school English and history, coaching, and teaching and coaching alongside some of the folks that coached me and taught me, and it was a really great ideal experience. You have a lot of teaching, especially that age group. You're doing a lot of one-on-one work with students, and you really feel like you have an invested interest in their progress. The one thing that started to worry me though, and I'm not saying it's it was a founded worry, was kind of the cyclical nature of teaching and education, where I feel like, was I doing the same thing year in and year out? Was there something, it didn't seem like there was necessarily a direction to progress in, and I think maybe it was a naive thought on my that I had, but it was a concern, and it certainly was a concern. And while teaching, Win, my co-founder, moved to Baltimore, and he had a business background. He had an MBA and came to Baltimore to a late venture firm called ABS Capital that invests in kind of mid-sized, small to mid-sized technology software companies. So like Rosetta Stone was one of their investments, so kind of around that size. And we started, it was great to see Win again. We were good friends in college, and we started chatting more and more about maybe it'd be interesting to do something in the software and education space. And as a teacher, seeing a little more, more and more digital technology come out. We might have been at the point there of the peak of us kind of an ed tech bubble in terms of funding. We didn't know it at the time, but there was a lot of money going into education technology in terms of funding. It seemed like the time was ripe for disruption. And I started using more and more tools and more digital resources in the classroom, and we started to see an opportunity. But around that time, we got to start, and we had to think a little bit about, what do we do? Do we kind of progress down this road or not? And I started talking to one of my mentors at the school, who was a really interesting guy, teacher later in life, but really successful previously in business. About what we were going, what I wanted to do, and some of the impact we wanted to make in education, which I'll talk about. And I was really kind of looking for his approval, and I was like, I'm worried about getting stuck in the cyclical nature. It'd be great to impact. And he actually relayed some words spoken by the head of the Special Olympics when addressing some teachers. And as head of Special Olympics, was talking about to teachers, well, how do you reconcile, the need to, impact major change and scale, in the day-to-day, work you do. And, he was the one that said, well, small ball counts, kind of little by little, small ball counts. And I left that thinking, well, I don't know that we're necessarily playing small ball now. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to hear, but I think now, as we've kind of gone on our journey, that lesson has started to apply more and more to our daily pursuit, and we can talk a little more about that. To where we wanted to start off, we wanted to start off with a platform called SmartBinder, and really our goal was to create an end-to-end curriculum management platform for teachers and educators that would give great data analytics, and it was just a great sounding tool, on paper and in a pitch book for sure. We had a little bit of learning to do on how to get from A to Z very quickly. And one of our goals was to create a product that teachers could use digital resources, organize them, deliver those resources to students in the form of e-lessons, and let them get feedback on how their students work through those lessons. And so, while working, Win and I, scraped a little bit of money together, and kind of one of the first things we had to do was find developers. And we didn't know any developers really that we could go to, but we knew some people in the startup community and got some recommendations on where to go. So we outsourced development to a development shop that was kind of trending in Atlanta, and we really wanted to get started on our MVP. One of the big lessons we've learned in retrospect is outsourcing development is a really risky proposition. So, this shop, we kind of hit them at their high point, and shortly thereafter, they were acquired by a bigger shop, and that's kind of where everything went downhill. And looking back, I think we probably developed with them for about a year, but we had 6 different developers, and the turnover and churn was just really, really difficult. We just weren't a priority. They were getting bigger and bigger contracts. They're pushing better and better people to their own, University of Miami. I think they might have had the Washington Post. They had a number of them, and suddenly we were kind of left with getting very junior folk that were cycling through. And our process kind of just took a long, long time. At the end, we were able to present our case to them. By the time we finished working with them, our case to them that we really feel like we were hurt by all these turnovers, and we were able to fight and get a good chunk of money returned, which was really important for us. But we were at the end able to push out a minimal viable product, a free teacher tool. In our education model, and I don't know if anybody here knows education, there's a few assumptions you have. It's its own beast, and we made a few assumptions. One assumption was that there'd be fast technological adoption of devices. It seemed like it was trending that way. There were big announcements, on iPads in the school, internet connectivity. The White House was pushing full connectivity of 95% of schools, in a 5-year period. We're still waiting for that to happen. It didn't happen, but it happened enough. There are software tools in education. We thought that would be slightly faster. We also realized that we weren't really equipped as a 2-person startup at first to sell to school districts. It's a really burdensome, tiresome process, so we decided we can go to teachers, and we started looking at trending and some initiatives. Bill Gates was funding some initiatives. Talk more about Bill Gates' initiatives a little later, but called digital wallet. Give teachers some dollars to purchase the tools that are good for them. And we're like, if this mirrors other industries, eventually teachers are going to have maybe the ones that are have a budget to spend on their own classroom tools, and that's the way we can get bypass procurement processes for large districts and try to find a way in the back door. We're still waiting on that to happen today as well. There are some initiatives, but really it is still top-down purchasing system. There's another disruption as well. Right about the time we released our MVP, which was a free teacher tool, and then we wanted to get some traction to raise a little money, and we released our tool, and we had some great reviews from bloggers. Loved it. We had some good industry awards. They loved it as well, and we had some good, some good pace of onboarding teacher users, and so we were pretty excited about that, and we were able to raise a little bit more money so that we could build out something beyond a free teacher tool, that we could get to teachers purchasing and maybe even get some schools purchasing. That being said, around the same time, we also had a big influx of money into K-12 that was actually more charitable in nature, philanthropic, and it would really change kind of the landscape. So Google Apps for Education has been free forever. That's Google Docs, Google Calendar, and they're onboarding increasing number of products. But then Google came out with Google Classroom a little bit later, another free tool for teachers to really organize and manage their lessons and their resources and their grades. At the same time, Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation started funding a wide variety of content and startup initiatives in K-12 as well. The foremost among is Khan Academy, which a number of people might have heard about, but there was a variety of other platforms too. Guru, which ended up looking a lot like ours. There's one called Blend Space too, and so we started seeing in education, there's a lot of philanthropic money getting in there that is providing resources to teachers for free, and we started getting concerned about our potential revenue model. What are we going to do? We weren't backed by a foundation or by a major corporation, so we started really having to think hard about what our next steps would be. The final piece of the puzzle that informed kind of our next decision was that it turned out, unlike other SaaS businesses, user numbers didn't mean anything in education. We followed a number of companies. We looked at Edmodo as a big prevalent one that's raised tens and tens of millions of dollars, and claims to have the most accounts of any platform. And they marketed themselves as Facebook for teachers, presumably to get acquired by Facebook. Well, their problem was Facebook already had all of their users on their social platforms, and you can't really advertise to teachers and students. Nobody's really proven that model. Nobody does it, and so they're still there. They've tried a few other things. They tried to do an app, kind of a platform approach where you could purchase apps, but everybody just ended up doing in-app purchases instead. So they had some trouble. We looked at another startup in the ed tech space called Socrative. Socrative gained, I think they claimed 30 million accounts, between teachers and students worldwide, which is amazing. It's like they were a real, you know, in kind of the early tech area, they were a real winner. You know, they had all of these accounts, and it was a teacher response tool. You know, students could, on their device or a clicker, respond to teacher questions, and, you know, there's some polling and analytics. And it was just a really great, easy tool to use. But then, you know, shortly thereafter, they were bought by another startup for $5 million. And we were thinking, well, that's not a high premium per user, and we're not going to be able to get. We didn't think we'd ever be able to get to 30 million accounts. That's a tremendous number worldwide. So obviously, you know, there wasn't value in the space in user numbers, and so we started thinking, well, what can we do? You know, around this time, some other startups that are, you know, running a similar things, you know, did fold up shop. But we decided, you know, we owed it to, you know, our investor base, and, you know, there might be a fail fast mentality on the West Coast, but we found kind of investors are less sympathetic to that attitude on the East Coast, and we still thought there were opportunities to run at. So the first thing we did was figure out what can we use our platform for, what market can we use that makes sense for us to go after, given our brand, our connections, and what can we do to start getting some revenue. So, you know, we started looking at our user base and what they were, and, you know, on our free tool. And what we noticed was our platform, you know, some of the, you know, really high energetic, tech adopting teachers loved it and were using it. You know, the average teacher would think it was very cool. Just like, you know, the bloggers, you know, wrote it up, they'd use it, think it was cool, use it for, you know, a couple logins. But it ended up being a little bit too much work to structure and design beautiful e-learning lessons to deliver to students. But we realized, well, we have some champion users out there and teachers out there. What can they tell us about our applications? And we put our heads together, and, you know, kind of through our K-12 journey, had run into conversations with more and more cultural institutions and museums. And we're like, you know, this might be, you know, a short bridge for us to find some revenue. And we switched developers to some in-state, in-town developers, a local shop, who we had much better relationship with than the folks out of Atlanta. We did the face-to-face meetings on a regular basis, daily stand-ups, everything that we should have, you know, would have been great to do early on. And they ended up being really great in helping us bridge the gap to what we called, you know, we went from SmartBinder to SmartBinder Reach, a tool to help museums reach more audiences through digital education. You know, we weren't sure if there was a big, you know, fundable, exciting model there, but we were able to, you know, early on board in the Mid-Atlantic area, you know, a decent number of museums who were interested in, you know, their historical societies, nature centers, you know, other types of organization providing services, outward bound type organizations. You know, folks that wanted a kind of a digital arm to their educational programming. And, you know, we went out and were able to onboard some folks, and it got us some revenue, and it's continued to fuel us in our revenue. You know, we wanted to see if there was a bigger market there, because we identified that as a place that was dominated by custom kind of dev shops. You know, they have relationships, and we're like, well, if we can build a platform that, you know, works for everybody, you know, maybe there is, you know, a model here. It turns out these places like their custom dev shops, and they actually, rather than us, you know, at the end of the day, undermining that market, you know, our clients wanted us to become more and more of a custom dev shop, which was fine in the short run, because it meant, you know, more cash flow, more income, and we were able to build our team a little bit. The one thing, you know, kind of a pretty telling example, it was probably the last time we were, you know, really out trying to sell folks beyond. We had a call with the Colorado Museum and a meeting and a demo online, and it just went fantastic. They were on board, and then the next day we got an email. Actually, we've been advised we should work with somebody in-state, in Colorado, and that's kind of what we found. They like the relationships. Sales cycles slow there. They like their you know, all the money's coming in from a third party, and they don't necessarily care about cheapest, most efficient. What they care about is something that is unique to them. But, you know, what that allowed us to do, though, was grow a little bit. We were able to bring in Quarterway, somebody we really wanted to be our lead developer. In the meantime, to bring development in-house, we were able to bring on some folks to do some more sales and marketing for us while we looked for what would really be our exciting opportunity. We were happy, we had a brand in education. We were happy about growing our business a little bit, even if it wasn't necessarily that fundable, awesome model. We existed, we stayed alive, and we grew. And about this time, one of those relationships we had, kind of just early on, turned into, kind of led into what we think could be our, our next big break. So there's an organization in DC, the International Neuroscience Network Foundation. We're actually heading down there right after this. And they were, they're really a group of scientists who are interested in kind of brain technology interfaces, who are interested in doing something in the K-12 space. And started chatting with them, and they really got us, they started getting really interested in virtual reality applications to K-12, which we knew, we didn't know anything really beyond, the TechCrunch articles and that space. So, we started talking to them, like, well, what is this about? How does this apply to us? Should we should we go this way, or should we continue exclusively working with our web-based curriculum platform? And the more we thought about it, the more we saw there were some, really interesting synergies and maybe a really interesting possibility to enter the education space with kind of some virtual reality enhanced education. And there were a few important disruptions happening. That over there on the box is, I'm sure many of you know, is the Oculus Rift. And that's a development kit too. And Oculus has popped up and on the West Coast a few years ago and was bought by Facebook for $2.3 billion. And the Rift, the magic there was, it took technology that 10 years ago might have been $250,000 in the form of a cube, or $75,000 in the form of really sophisticated headsets, and condensed it into $350. So there's an opportunity there. That was massive. That's why you have, and that is why very high valuation. We were chatting earlier. Sorry, what was your name again? Yeah, we were chatting earlier, and another big development was kind of the rise of Unity and some of these gaming platforms to make it very easy to build really good-looking and engaging, games with great graphics very cheaply. And so, we started thinking more and more, and like a lot of people, saw a real opportunity for disruption, and that everything was becoming so much less expensive. And traditionally, virtual reality has been resigned to really high cost, high risk training. It's been used by the military, been used Center for Disease Control, been used for kind of some psychological treatment, for the Veterans Affairs Office, et cetera. Stuff that's important, really costly, but also, it makes sense that, the cost benefit makes sense. So, we started chatting with this organization a little more and thinking, well, you know what, maybe the time is now. And, Oculus wasn't the only one coming out. There's other companies as well. Samsung's running out. They have a product called Gear VR, which is based off Oculus technology, but runs off of the Galaxy 6. We saw, Google coming out with Google Cardboard, which anyone can download on their smartphone now, and you just, $20 gets you a Google Cardboard, and you're putting, basically for a cost of $10 to $20, you can put yourself in virtual reality on your environments on your phone. And there's kind of everybody left and right was running at it, and it's not even mentioning some of the holographic technologies that are coming out from Microsoft and their HoloLens, and the Google invested Magic Leap, which are more importing virtual objects or holographic objects into your field of vision in a really creative and immersive way. We're kind of more focused on, we're going to look there, but just talking virtual reality, just really, really interesting. So we started working with this organization and wanted to see, well, is there a case to be made for virtual reality in the K-12 classroom? There's a lot of assumptions there too, just like there are for any app. But some of the assumptions we're making are that excitement matters for adoption. It's hard to, you can build some great web-based software, but it's just not quite as exciting these days. This is first generation. Another assumption that we're going to make is that it is useful for learning, not only for creating learning outcomes, but also for creating student engagement for learners who don't traditionally, may have, let's just say the traditional textbook lecture type mode of education may present some difficulties for them, which is a lot of people. And also, obviously, that you can find a model to get it into schools and to grow the content, because you have to grow both sides. So, what we did with this organization was they funded us, seeded us for our first set of hardware, and we built our first experience. Very basic experience. Students will float down the Amazon River and take photographs of wildlife they see and get information on that wildlife. Short, simple, but what we wanted to do was, prove the use case. So we went to some ed camps, which are basically kind of, I guess, the equivalent of this, but for teachers. Kind of very, informal conferences, teacher-led conferences. They can get 100 teachers. We went to some ed camps and wanted to say, hey, are there any teachers that want this us to bring this technology into their classroom, do our experience, improve the use case? And we were very pleased. We gave ourselves 3 weeks to kind of do as many pilots as we could, and we pretty much booked every week, all in the Mid-Atlantic area. So we saw there was a lot of excitement there, and we had to figure out some of the logistics as well. And there are some logistics to figure out. These are development kits. They are not necessarily ready for commercial use yet. They're finicky, and they don't run on just anything. For our experience, we need a pretty powerful computer, so we spec'd out some good laptops, spec'd out some good ways of transporting them into rooms, some good kits. And really what we did, and we're kind of just coming out of this phase, we have one today, and that's pretty much our last pilot, but is getting this in the classroom, proving the use case, getting excited, because most people still, and especially people who aren't necessarily in the tech community or necessarily tech savvy, don't even know, virtual reality is still a science fiction concept to them. Outside the tech community, probably 1 out of every 3 people mentioned virtual reality to still is not, doesn't really register what it is. Maybe it's a greater amount of people. We did these pilots and we started getting people really excited about the technology and people really excited about signing up. And so our next step, there's kind of a different approach for us than we had before. Before, we had some feedback in our development of our web-based platform, but it was kind of a build, release, see what comes. Now we're really kind of, compared to our old way, leading with the cart, in that we're kind of going at it and trying to build as we go to the excitement of teachers. And our goal is to build a web-based platform that makes this process of getting students, in devices, but really launching experiences as simple as possible for teachers. Web-based, something that makes it A to Z let teachers download educational experiences, launch them, get data and insight into their students. Right now it's still a very manual process, and there's a lot of work to do to make it as easy as possible. So we're partnering with some content partners. We partner with our first other developer group who builds STEM video games. They're interested, highly interested, and they're going to be converting their games to virtual reality. And overall, we're relatively excited and about this juncture and where we can go with it. And we're really kind of just out of our R&D phase. So I wish we could tell you a little more, but like I said, this was kind of the end of our 3 weeks of pilots. Really debating where is the angle, and our challenges are easy. It's how do you build both ends of a network? You need content providers, and you need schools. This is worthless to the schools without the content, worthless to the content providers without the schools. So we're trying to think cleverly about some ways to do that, some good niche angles. We're highly interested in this as a tool for more technical skill development, career and technical skill development in schools. We think it's a really fantastic tool for hands-on work and putting students in workplace situations they may not be in. So we're looking heavily at the CTE space, which is career and technical education space. There's also, for us, it's also, and especially in Baltimore, coming out of some pretty significant protests, that is a angle of emphasis in our city. It's, workforce development, education, workforce development clearly aren't doing their job right now. And so what innovations, need to arise in the way that those areas are facilitated and handled. So that's what we're looking at.
Okay, that's good. Let's make sure we get a bunch of Q&A and thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
I always think of education as a pretty tough market, and then you're jumping into like the most cutting edge technology. But with the Google conference last week, they just came out with just a ton of amazing stuff, including the cardboard thing.
Yeah.
My first question is, can you explain the distance between that cardboard device and Oculus Rift, and what does it mean, like in the next 3 months for general people?
So that's a great question, because cardboard is another example of free content and tools being put in the classroom. We've explored with both. The basic difference is power and the ability to interact. So the tethered version, and we're chatting with folks at partnering with folks in the open source virtual reality movement, and they're very married to the tethered version. And so, what the glasses are great for, kind of maybe examining pictures. You can envision kind of going through Google Street View with the glasses on. There's some good 360 film content. Where it lacks is kind of interactivity that we think is important in STEM sciences, that we think is important in skill-based education. It may be the case that the cardboard works great for virtual field trips. And I think it will. I think it'll work very well for, it'll work well for virtual field trips. Let's go to the Smithsonian, kind of walk into each room, look around. Let's go to the battlefield. But we don't think it will work as well for if we're trying to continue in that traditional vein of training, kind of from the military CDC on down to education. We think that interactivity and engagement and data tracking is important.
Okay. Last question. What's the one sentence value prop for Alchemy Learning?
The one sentence value prop for Alchemy Learning? Well,
what do you got?
It's something frankly, it's something we're still figuring out how to condense into one sentence. Today we have a little bit of an early mover advantage, and we want to be kind of your end-to-end solution for a school. Don't think about it, we'll spec everything out. That's not a long-term proposition. We worry about defensibility.
So a virtual reality platform for education?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions, house rules, name, title, your sign on the chorus.
You want to come up?
And your question.
Yeah, Chad Wingrave, technologist. Okay. I'm jumping in my seat here. My background is in virtual reality talks.
Yeah.
And just I have a whole list, and I'll go down them. But
I know.
One of the things that people I know who have used virtual reality and tried to create companies out of it. So like you mentioned post-traumatic stress therapy, something like some of my advisors were the founders of those companies.
Oh, gotcha.
So I've been around the companies trying to do virtual reality for a while. One of the ways people have gone into education with virtual reality is to not sell to teachers, and it's to sell to the textbook companies, because they make contracts with textbook companies, and textbook companies need some way to upsell their textbook. Like, why is it? But it comes with a CD. That doesn't really work anymore.
Right.
Having it in with you guys, if you could have like a certain number of hours with your product or something like that, however you want to figure out your system, might be an approach, or content from your website through the Google approach. That might be something to get it out there.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. I think channels are very important in education. And that's actually, it's not super dissimilar from what we're looking at in the CTE space, where CTE, Career Technical Education, there are a few governing organizations that are interesting to go through. But I think looking at some of the publishers is something that is potentially very interesting. I mean, ultimately, we do not want to just be a development shop for publishers. It's important if we're looking at our value and valuation that we have, that we at a minimum own the content so that it accrues value. But it'd be great to kind of chat more about your thoughts there.
There's a company a block away, Bergwall Productions. They've been in the career or the technical education media space for 30 years. They did like automotive training, like with film strips back in the day, and we should connect you guys because they're a platform for content, and they might be interested. They're trying to recreate themselves. So next question.
All right. So this is more of, I guess, a question from a different perspective. You talked about selling to like teachers and, like you said, textbook companies. My question really is, what about parents? Because here's the deal: I have a 4th grader and an 8th grader, and I'm willing to pay money right now. Open my wallet and give a credit card. If you can find something engaging for my kid to do in the summer, that I don't have to yell at them, do this or do that, and it will sort of contribute to their education. Because that's the biggest. Those are the folks who have the money and who can shell out cash.
And probably even more importantly, you've hit on something that we have been debating a lot internally is where is the market going to be sooner, right? So if you look at history, and which tends to repeat itself, schools are not going to all have Oculus Rifts stations. So our market there is very enterprise salesy. We're helping them get the hardware in order to sell our software, which is tough. There probably will be a lot of, just because of the consumer pricing, a lot of families with kids that want to spend money on their kids to learn better. And so I guess the short answer is we're working on it. We know schools today, and so that's where we are, but we definitely think that's going to be a potentially better market. I guess the flip side to that is it is a consumer market. So, you don't see a niche app store, you see an app store. There will be a category, as there already is in the Google Play Store, for educational apps, right? And so you can go buy an Oculus Rift and download your educational apps, and adding value to a school takes a lot more than that. So that's what we wrestle with, kind of on the downside of selling to that market.
What about like surgeon training, or like, are you guys, you touched education for like interesting markets like that?
I think that's a very big market. We're concerned that we're not the most well placed there. The simulations exist on other platforms. It's highly, it's certainly highly technical, but we think medical, that is already, the value there is already very clear because it is high. The cost makes sense.
Those are multi-million-dollar simulations.
Oh, you can do it like over the weekend? Barbara?
I'm actually with managed IT services, but my husband teaches research and statistics as well as education at Westchester University, and couldn't be here. So I'm asking for him, how do you create the evaluation for your program to prove it's all about the testing? You've got to show that there's some value in what you're doing to actually increase something in the education field.
Yeah, so there's, one thing we like about virtual reality is it does not necessarily have to be, it integrates well with our existing platform. And so, one of the first technical hurdles we'll look to clear is, some integration where we get the virtual reality experiences talking to our platform. So you can have your pre-lessons and then your post-lessons that are, in essence, adaptive based on, how a learner interacted in their virtual reality experience. It takes some work, and that's kind of a broad, high-level answer. But one of the issues today is, you go in, you have your experience, then it's over, and you can talk about it, or you can try to do some pre-post. But ultimately, we think the virtual reality platform education that's going to win out is one that is highly integrated, highly adaptive with web-based tools.
Is your question all about sort of efficacy testing?
Actually, yes. When you're trying to sell to a school district or whatever, that's all about the numbers. It's like, here's in, here's out, how do you do that?
And that's a great question, because it's going to be some number of years before there is perfect data on how good virtual reality is for K-12 students. It hasn't yet. So one of the things we are doing is, we do have some partners, some nonprofit partners, foundations that do care about that. They think the thesis is that it helps we certainly believe that, and so we're looking at some NSF grants and things that can actually produce a study that would say that.
And
But until then, it's going to be soft data, and seeing is believing. So one of the things we're doing,
Right.
Henry alluded to, is going into classrooms, and every teacher has come out of that saying, I've never seen this kid so engaged. He was talking about the content, he was talking about the creative ideas.
Who's put on a pair of, do you say a pair of? Who's put on, who's had that on their head? Anybody, raise your hand. 3 people?
Yeah, we own one for SparkNet, and we've played with it a little bit. I like to tell people, it's like the scene from The Matrix, where Morpheus says, you can't talk about the Matrix, you have to experience it. I find that's very true for VR, because when you get into it, it can actually create a very realistic, simulation to the point where you feel like you're there. The first time I had it on, my girlfriend walked up behind me, had this at home, and was talking to me, and I turn around in the simulation, and I turn around in the simulation, I'm in like Italy or something, and there's no one there, and it disconnected my mind. I was like, whoa, that's really weird, because I could hear her there, but then she wasn't actually there.
So will some people have the opportunity? Are you going to demo that after, or?
We can set it up now for a few minutes, yeah.
Okay, we're going to charge $5 for that. We need some money right now. Who's next? Jim?
Sure. Jim Jones, I'm a teacher down here at Westchester University. And I guess what I notice in education is an awful lot of people are trying to make it all quantifiable. And so it's all getting a lot more rigid, at least at the university level, and I think probably at the secondary level as well. How's that affecting your thinking about the product that you're making?
Well, I guess almost to start kind of with what one was alluding to, the seeing is believing. There is a trend. So there is a trend towards certainly making everything quantifiable. One thing in the early days we're hoping to capitalize on is just the importance of student engagement for students who are, especially in secondary education, who traditionally are left behind by the system. Getting them excited. It sounds funny, but there's a new trending term in those situations called edutainment, where you want to, it's just as being a teacher is just as much about, kind of compelling that engagement and interesting, and interested nature as it is, delivering content. But we do, we think we are looking to, though, partner with some of our partner organizations, prove the use case, do the studies that there can be learning outcomes associated with it. Don't know that it's going to be Common Core aligned, but we do think it could be next gen science aligned, and we do think it can be, career and technical skill aligned. We'll see. Common Core is, very strict math, very strict, reading, writing, and it can be done. It's just a slightly trickier proposition.
There is also, because of that trend, there is also a funding trend in the opposite direction. So you see a lot of companies who are being hurt by a STEM skills gap, right? So the big corporations that need those workers are setting up foundations that are funding science programs, sort of the more soft skills, outside the box thinking, the creative, innovative thinking. Also a lot of wealthy individuals who want to see more of that in the country. So.
Okay. You're new, I think.
I am new.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Gene Volpe, I'm a Pisces. You gotta follow by the rules, right? So this is a two-parter. Number one, do you guys have any press packets or anything or something along the lines of a marketing package for the common man who's uneducated to take a look at in a 1 minute or 2 minute type thing? That's the first part. Second part is, as you're talking, I'm thinking about a couple things. I haven't heard you say anything about special ed. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for that what you guys are doing in that space, folks that don't learn, like the rest of us do. And that's not a knock, obviously. I mean, there's people that need special needs.
Right.
And I wonder if that visual piece of it would be something that you can...
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well. In these initial pilots, we tried to get a cross-section, and one of them was at a school that specialized in learning differences and dyslexia in particular, and they were particularly excited. We need to have just more conversations, but we their leadership was excited. They did think that there were great opportunities for helping students with learning differences really engage and visualize and understand concepts that maybe they may find kind of difficult pulling out of the textbook. I think that's a very interesting one where just need more conversations to kind of figure out what is our kind of first niche, because we do need an angle in. We will.
Can you live stream into VR? You get kids who couldn't participate in a field trip to kind of be there in virtual reality with their classmates at a museum so they can feel like they went on a trip.
So that's kind of tapping into, so you can build experiences with Unity, or you can capture a 360-degree film kind of with an orb. There's not a consumerized product that would let you, it would have to be a 360 rig, and if it's 3D, that's 360, 6 GoPros, 360 3Ds, 12 GoPros. GoPro just made some acquisitions in the space, and they also have live streaming, so they may be moving towards creating a consumer product there. There's some specialty shops that do, that have their own secret sauce, that are kind of basically production companies that do some cool things, but right now the stitching, like if you're stitching those cameras together, basically takes as much time and cost as it does to make a experience on Unity in some cases.
Okay, then we're going to pivot Walnut Labs to go after that. That sounds like a lot of fun. We got for one more minute. So
9:55.
Last question, Mike.
Hi, I'm Michael Cresta. I'm an Aaron. Have you run into standardized testing when you talk to these schools, and how that fits into standardized testing is a big subject here.
Yeah, so it depends. Like alluded to, Common Core, and I believe Pennsylvania is a Common Core state. They take either the PARCC test or the SBAC at the end of the year, and that's tied to some funding. I don't know that this is going to be a great tool for that, but students are. But one of the major things for standardized testing, and I'm not sure that it's right, and I'm not sure that this is the place, but teachers are just trying to find ways to engage students to. Museums are suffering, for instance, and cultural institutions are suffering from a lack of enrichment field trips. There's kind of been a trend from enrichment to reward. So you go to the beach now instead of going to the history museum because you want to give the kids a reward for standardized testing. I don't know if virtual reality is like an in-classroom kind of reward in that case, that it can be used. Obviously, we wouldn't want that to be the primary purpose. But as pertains standardized testing, that might be it. Again, maybe you could create and design a really nice experiment to help students learn math or, reading, but that would kind of seem a gerrymandered use of the technology that is kind of so immersive and interactive.
What if you just turned a Scantron sheet into like punching bags? Punch D and then C.
That actually could be it. That's fun.
No, we have no more questions. Are you raising your hand? Okay, we'll let you know. I gotta end.
And I didn't get a chance to pull the birthday card on my birthday, so I'm pulling it out to ask a question after 10 o'clock. So we talk here in the lab, all the time about how there is a huge need for employers to source the top dev talent. And I wanted to know between the two of you if you think there's like a huge connect or disconnect maybe between the need for implementing technology within the educational system, as well as providing so that access to technology for education, and the need to ultimately cultivate more developers. So is that part of your mission at all, or have you considered that?
So you're making kind of facilitating that, the growing more developers?
Yeah.
Not just users of end.
Yeah, not
great
just consumers
technology.
of technology, but
right.
People, and I feel like almost that accessibility that accessibility within education may, in essence, allow people to feel like, yeah, I could do this too.
We do think that this is a good tool for sparking just general excitement in the STEM and sciences. I don't know that if you could do something that is, better than Code Academy or, Treehouse or some of the, coding programs in virtual reality specifically, but one area we've gotten a lot of good feedback is from is kind of, that middle school age, kind of 8th grade, 9th grade, when we tend to lose a lot of people that had, maybe interest, growing up in, becoming the next great scientist. We sort of do a nice job of beating that out of them by the time they're seniors. I think it's the status 70% of students that enter in high school with an interest in STEM lose it by the time they finish, and the result is we kind of have like only 13% of graduating seniors are both interested in and proficient in kind of the STEM sciences, pursuing meaningfully whatever STEM their science are looking at in the next level. So we think this is some of the feedback we've gotten is not only a great tool itself, but can help bring STEM sciences to life. Some of those high barrier of entry concepts that knock kids out, whether it's chemistry, and kids go into 10th grade and bomb out on chemistry and say, I suck at science, and are done with it. And if it's a matter of if you can use this technology to really bring chemical reactions and to life, and kind of bring some of those really tough abstract concepts that exist only in diagram to life, then it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, just the engineering is interesting. So software development in general is of the realm of STEM skills gap is one that is very well being focused on, right? So there's a lot of good web tools. I know my nephew has taught himself to code. Right? He's 12, it's just we've seen a lot of really great after-school programs in a lot of the public schools. Code in the schools, but with this, that breaking down the barrier between that digital analog really is helpful with the hands-on STEM concepts, which is broader and maybe a little easier for us to target than the development.
All right, cool. Thank you for that question. You didn't give your sign.
I am a Gemini.
No Tauruses. Stubborn you.
I love how empowering this is to talk about.
All right.
Energy.
So let's give a round of applause for these guys.
Thank you.
We're going to be dumping photos and video into all the social channels. If you see it, retweet it or reshare it, and hopefully we'll see some of you next week. Thanks a lot for coming, and feel free to stick around and chat with these guys and drink more coffee.
I'm involved with a nonprofit that does basically educate people that drop